Hi, in today's video I'm going to be covering how to set up a Openvpn split tunnel using Linux network namespaces. Basically what this means is normally all your traffic's going to go out the VPN. What a split VPN will do is allow us to specify which applications we want to route through the VPN. Now basically what I'm doing is there's some scripts floating about on the internet that I've modified and improved a bit. This is the original script. Then there's VPN in a nutshell. And this other article about running a single application for a VPN. So what I'll do now is close Firefox and switch to the terminal and show you how this works. And what this will allow us to do, as I said, is put our Torrent client, our browser, and other applications into the VPN and have all our other traffic go out our regular route. So what I'm going to do is switch to my directory full of OpenVPN configurations for private internet access. And what I've done is I've also up here, where is it, auth.txt. In this file is my username and password for OpenVPN. So what I'm going to do now is run a script, VPN net. I'm going to specify the authentication file and the endpoint we want to connect to on the VPN, which in this case is the US West. I'll enter my password. Okay, and now it's connecting to the VPN. What I'll do now is I'll switch across to Emacs with my notes. Where is it? Somewhere in here. But what I'm going to do is actually open up Firefox here. Firefox. And what I've done is created a separate desktop entry which is going to put the Firefox browser into the VPN network namespace. So if I run what's my IP and come across here, give it a second, and I just need to enable JavaScript, and you'll see that it will come up with my IP address in a second. So that's the IP address of the VPN server. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start the transmission client, which is a torrent client, and put it into the VPN. And I'm also going to check the IP address of a torrent that I'm downloading with transmission and show you that it will match this IP address here, so that we can see the VPN is also in the correct namespace. So I'll just switch back to here, and where did I put my notes? Okay, yeah, check your torrent IP address. Okay, so this is a site where you can actually check your torrent IP address. But first of all, what I need to do is start my torrent client in the network namespace, and I'm going to be doing that by running namespace torrent. Oh, fuck's sake, torrents. There we go. And now I'll open transmission in the browser. And what I'm going to do is check the IP address, and this is a magnet link. So when I click that, it's going to ask if I want to open this magnet link. Click yes, and you'll see here in a second it should come up. Okay, and you can see here, Packet returned an error. IP, it's fine saying it's showing an error, but this is the important bit here, the IP address 184.170.252.251, and if we come across here, we can see that matches the IP address of the VPN client. So I'm just going to have some tea. So what we've got here is the browser in a separate namespace, and what I can also do is varbg.to. I'll come into this. By default, varbg is blocked on my network. That's why I'm using a VPN. So if I come across to Chromium and try the same thing, it should say it's blocked varbg.to. Should do nothing. Basically, you can see it's not connecting. So this browser here is going through my regular output, and you can see nothing's happening. I'll just put BBC. You see the browser's working. Okay. So this is going through my regular connection, whereas Firefox is routed through the VPN. So how did we do this, and how do we set all this up? And the other thing I wanted to mention is what I'm also doing is using the Unbound DNS server. And what I'm doing is I'm putting the Unbound DNS server into the VPN namespace as well. So all our DNS traffic is going through the VPN. So let's crack on and have a look at what we need to actually do to get this set up. So I'll just close Firefox for the moment and come across to Emacs and show you how we get this working. I'll also take the VPN down while I'm doing this because there's no reason for it to be running. And I'll quit the torrent client. Okay, right. So first of all, what we're going to do is create a couple of scripts. This first script is the script that actually connects to the VPN. So first of all, we've got some usage so that if you enter a wrong argument for the script, it's going to tell you about it and tell you what you need to do. Got the error messages. We check if the script's run as root, number of arguments passed to the script. And this is the get opt, and this is basically when you run the script. You saw I ran sudo vpn -netns -a for the authentication, -c for the configuration file, and you can see these options correspond to this case statement here. So the bottom down here, what we've actually got is the VPN connection code, and what we're doing is we run auth no cache so that it doesn't cache our user credentials. Then we have to run script security 2 to allow us to run our own scripts with Openvpn. No root pull and redirect gateway. And what we do here is we run these two bits of code: if config no exec and root no exec, and that's needed so we can use the up and down scripts. And what we've got here is an up and down script that gets activated when we bring up the VPN and take it down. And I'll show you that in a bit. And basically then we've got the configuration and the author path, the file with our credentials in it. We make that executable and we copy it to user local bin. So that's the first thing. That's the actual script that starts up the VPN. So I'll put links to all these under the video. Let me just open this up and show you this page here. Let me just work chunders away. Okay, and let me just come across to the scripts page, Ubuntu root, user local bin, and these are the scripts. So the first one we had was the VPN netns. So that's this script here. I just showed you an Emacs, script usage, error messages, and the VPN connection. Now the next bit is the netns VPN script, and basically what this is this is slightly modified version of the scripts I showed you at the beginning. So I'll come across here and show you that. If I can, netns, where was it? There we go. just in case it's easier to view this in GitHub rather than Emacs. So what we've got here is two functions, an up and down function. And basically what this does is it uses the IP netns command to create a namespace called VPN. It then brings up the loop device, like the local host loop device in that namespace. And then what we do is we're actually moving the VPN tunnel to the new netns namespace with this bunch of code here, which basically grabs the details of the routing connection. We put the root into netns, and now what we have to do is we're going to create a VPN namespace directory in etc netns VPN. And what we're going to do there is we actually need to create a resolve.configuration file which will contain the DNS server we're going to use. Now in my case, I'm using the Unbound DNS server on localhost. If you're not running Unbound, what you can do is replace this section here, 127.0.0.1, with something like 8.8.8.8, which is Google's DNS. So if you're not running Unbound, change this line to the DNS server you want to use, and you can remove this bit of code here, which basically stops the Unbound server. And what it then does is it restarts the Unbound server using a new systemd service file I've created that sets the Unbound server to be in the VPN namespace. And then what we've got here is we've got the down function, and what we do there is when we bring the VPN down, it removes the etc netns VPN directory with the resolve file in it for the DNS, and it deletes the namespace as well. And this bit here is where I'm stopping the Unbound netns service and then restarting the regular Unbound service. So if you're not using Unbound, just remove these sections. So that's the script that works with the VPN up and down to move the VPN into the namespace. So after we've done that, what we're going to do is we're actually going to create the Unbound netns service. So what we're doing here is this is a copy of the Unbound systemd service to start the DNS server. And basically what I've done is made a couple of changes. You can see here we've got exec start and exec reload, and basically what I've done is prefix this with the command to put it into the correct namespace. So we've got user bin IP netns execute VPN, and then it runs Unbound. And what we've also done here is actually change the PID file. So we've got a separate PID file for the Unbound server in the namespace and also the regular Unbound. So that's creating the Unbound netns service. And basically what we're going to do then is we copy that Unbound -netns.service to etc systemd system. And once we've done that, we need to reload systemd so it picks up that configuration file. So that's the Unbound setup. And if you're not using Unbound, you can just skip that. Now, after that, what we need to do is actually run a command in the namespace. And what we're going to do is create a script called Namespace containing this code here. And basically it's sudo IP netns exec VPN sudo -u who am I. The reason why we're doing this sudo -u who am I is because we're running we're using this namespace script to start applications in the VPN namespace, but we don't want to run them as root. We don't want to run Firefox as root, yeah? So what this will basically do is it will execute the command but run it as our current user. So we create the script with this little bit of code here. We make it executable, and then we copy it to user local bin. The reason why we're copying it to user local bin instead of our bin directory and our home directory is because when you're running stuff on sudo with Debian and Ubuntu based stuff, it won't look in your home directory path. It will just look in like user local bin, user bin for scripts. So that's why we put scripts that we run as sudo in user local bin. So that's the namespace script. And what we're also going to do is add a auto completion to our ZSH file. So edit our ZSH file and put in compdef _ pre-command namespace, which is the name of the script we just created, which will allow us to auto complete stuff on the command line. Now, the next important thing is how do we run this script without a password? Because you saw when I ran, when I started Firefox, I started it, you can see here, I actually ran, I've got two desktop entries for Firefox, the regular one and namespace Firefox. Now, the namespace Firefox is basically running that running that script. But as you can see, we could open it from our application launcher, and we didn't have to enter a password for sudo. So how did we do that? So first of all, what we need to do is we need to we're going to need to edit the sudoers configuration file, and we do that using vi sudo. Now on Ubuntu and I think maybe Debian, what they've done is they've changed when you run sudo vi sudo, it's going to launch a text editor to allow you to edit the sudoers file. And normally it's vi will be the editor, but on Ubuntu what they've done is they've changed it to nano. So if you're comfortable using nano, fine, you can skip this step, but I really don't like using nano. So what I'm going to do is run sudo update alternatives -- config editor, and what that will do is that will bring up this little screen here, you can see, and by default it's going to be set to nano. So what we're going to do is we're going to press 4 and change it to vim tiny, which is basically like vi. So what we do is we run sudo update alternatives -- configuration editor, brings up this screen, we press 4 and press return, and it's going to set the editor to be vim tiny. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to run sudo vi sudo, and what that will do is that will bring up sudo. So let me just switch to terminal here. So sudo vi sudo into my password. Okay, and what you'll see down here at the bottom is this line here with my username -- all, no password, and then the path to this bit of code here, user bin ip net exec sudo, and then basically, as I said, this is the equivalent of the namespace script. It will allow us to let me just switch back to Emacs. It will allow us to run that particular command without a password. And as you see here, note the final -- is important to prevent the user from passing other options to sudo. So that's a security thing. So we edit we edit the sudoers file with sudo vi sudo. We put in this bit of code replacing my username with your username, okay? And What I would also recommend doing is, in case you balled anything up, with the sudo's file, you'd be up shit creek. So what I would recommend doing is, when you're going to do this, open two terminals. In the first one, sudo su. Okay, so your root here, and this is the fallback in case you fuck anything up. Then run sudo vi sudo and edit the configuration file with your editor, and save the file. And if there's any errors, it's going to throw up a message. So be careful when you paste stuff in or type stuff in. And that's why we're opening this other terminal as root, just in case we balls anything up. So I'll quit that. So that's just a bit of common sense. So what we've done is we've edited our sudo as file so that we can then run that command without having to enter our password. So next, what we're going to do is we're going to create a Firefox desktop entry, and what we're going to do is we're going to copy the Firefox desktop entry, which on Ubuntu would be in user share applications firefox.desktop, and we're going to copy that to the desktop and rename it namespace-firefox.desktop. And in that file, what we're going to do is, if I come down here, scroll down, it's got all the different languages, and what you'll see is exec here, this exec line. One other thing I should point out while I remember it, this name is hang on, let me come back to the desktop entry, sorry. Okay, name here at the beginning, name namespace-firefox. The name has to correspond to the name of the desktop entry file. So the name of the desktop entry file is namespace-firefox.desktop. So we need to give it the same name here, because otherwise it's not going to launch. So that's the first thing. So that's the first change we've made. And then we're going to come down to this exec line. Comment, generic name. And you'll see here exec, and what we're doing here is we're prefixing this with user local bin namespace, which is the script that we created. Okay, and you'll see here desktop new window. What we're doing is the same thing, the exec. So look for the exec lines and basically prefix them with user local bin namespace before Firefox. Okay, so that's the desktop entry for Firefox. Let me just close this, so scroll back up and just bear with me. A lot of text there. Okay, all right, so that's the Firefox desktop entry. Now the next thing is the transmission torrent client. So what we're going to do is, while I have some tea, is we're going to create another script called Torrent. And basically all we're going to do in this script is, we've got the shebang here, bin sh, and we're just running transmission daemon. So create the file called, the script called torrents with that code in it, make it executable, and again we're going to remove that torrents file to the user local bin directory. Okay, we've done all that. And so what we can then do is, then when we want to start the transmission daemon, all we have to do is run namespace torrents, and that will put the torrent client into the namespace. Then after we've done that, what we can do is we can check our IP here using what's my IP, and check your torrent address. Yeah? Okay, so as I said, we can run the namespace torrents to put the torrents daemon into the VPN namespace, and we can check the IP and the torrent IP address again. So let's go through the actual workflow of using this again. So once we've got all that set up, I'll just switch across here, and what I'll do is come back to terminal, and I'll run the VPN script again. So sudo vpn netns -a the authentication file -c the name of the VPN endpoint we want to connect to, put in our password, okay. So now if I switch across here and I bring up my application launcher, which is Rofi, if I type Firefox, it's going to launch Firefox normally. If I ran what's my IP, it would show my home IP address, which I won't do. But basically, as I said, I'll try a site that's blocked, and you can see it's not going to connect. Yep, no dice. Quit that. I'm going to do the same thing. Now I'm going to launch the Namespace Firefox desktop entry. Namespace Firefox. And if I run RBG, you'll see that it will actually connect. Okay, so yeah, unblocked. And what we'll do is we'll come across here and we'll check our IP address again. So what's my IP? And just there we go. That's my IP. We'll do the check IP torrent address. And first of all, what we need to do is launch the torrent client in the namespace. So namespace torrents, and launch transmission. Oops, I can spell it properly. Transmission. That was still loaded from before, so let me just remove that and do it again. So torguard.net, check my torrent IP address.php. I'll put a link to this in the show notes and under the video. Click that, launch the magnet, give it a second, and you'll see here it's coming up with the IP address 184.170.242.182, which corresponds to this. So we can see that both the browser and the torrent client are now in the VPN namespace, and all the traffic for those applications is routed through the VPN, as well as our DNS. As I said, our Unbound DNS server is now sending our DNS through that address, and we can check that using DNS leak. Is it dnsleaktest.com? I think it is. Okay, hello from the United States. Okay, and we just turn this off. And what I'm going to do is run the extended test here. And what you'll see is it will just come up with showing one server found, which is my DNS server. So only one server found. So we're only using one DNS server. And we're sending all our traffic through that tunnel. So all our DNS is now going through the VPN namespace. And let me come across here and show you that that doesn't affect this. So if I come across to bbc.com, okay, so that's loading fine. So BBC redirected to bbc.co.uk. So what that means is that basically the other thing I should mention is, while I've got Chromium open, is that this doesn't work with Chromium, because Chromium is a snap application. What happens is when you try and put Chromium into the separate namespace, it's going to return an error and not work. and I don't know if there's much you can do about that. But basically, I use two browsers: Firefox, which I set to clear all cookies, and then I use Chromium with Google stuff so that it's always logged in, and also with things that require DRM for video, like Channel 4, ITV. So what it means is that basically I can be downloading torrents over the VPN using Firefox. So I can browse torrent sites in Firefox, send all the links to transmission, but at the same time, I can use Chromium and watch Channel 4 or ITV or BBC, anything that's in the UK. Whereas normally, if I was sending all my traffic through the VPN, what would happen is there'd be no telly for me. Basically means I wouldn't be able to watch UK TV while I'm actually downloading torrents, which is something that's rather annoying. So that's how we can basically have two browsers, one in the network, the VPN network namespace, and then the second one just going out a regular collection, a regular connection. What you can also do is run any application through the VPN now. So by prefixing a command with namespace, run ping -c google.com, c free google.com, send 3 pings. You can see that's now pinging through the network namespace. Just kill that. No packet loss. So that basically means that I can run any command line application through the network namespace. So what this might be useful for is, for example, if you want to do something like run a command to like download a video or something, legal video, of course, that is geo-blocked. So if you've got a something that's geo-blocked, and you wanted to use a command line application with a split VPN, you can do that simply by prefixing the command with the namespace script. So that basically allows us to, as I said, start the transmission torrent client, as I showed you, by running namespace torrents, and that puts the transmission client into the VPN namespace. Or, as I showed you, we can create a desktop entry for an application and launch it in the network namespace without having to enter a password. So what I'll do now is just bring up, let me just quit the VPN here, and I'll just bring up Firefox and show the notes again and the steps. So let me come across here, Ubuntu root. And as a side note, this is all these files here are my notes, and what I've done is I've actually reformatted all of these into org mode files, LMNOP, Openvpn. You can see it all, or most of them apart from the scripts, are org files, so that we have some nice sort of layout. So first of all, we've got the links to the articles that I was referencing here, a VPN in a nutshell, and running a single application through a VPN. So these are the notes, and the original guy who did this is Sebastian. I'm going to mangle your last name, mate, so I'm not going to try and pronounce it. But this is the original script here, basically, that I've sort of modified a bit. So these are the 3 articles that I've used to accomplish this. So then we've got the VPN NS script, which is the script to launch the VPN with the usage, error messages, check if the scripts run as root, check number of arguments passed to the script. We've got the getops. Basically what that does is that checks the arguments passed to the script with the -A for the authentication or the -C for the VPN configuration file. And down here what we've got is the Openvpn code with the auth no cache to stop it caching the password credentials. We need the script security 2, doing root no pull, redirect gateway, and we need these bits of code here to stop it using ifconfig by default. And then what we're doing is we're running the up and down scripts, the NS VPN script for up and down, and specifying the configuration and the authentication. We made that executable and copied it to use local bin. And the next script we created was the netns-vpn script. And these are all shell scripts, not bash, so they're all POSIX compliant. And what we do is we've got the up function and the down function, where we create the network namespace, bring up the loop device, move the VPN to the tunnel to the new namespace, set up the routes. And again, this is the important bit. What we're doing here is we create this etc netns VPN directory, and we echo our DNS name server into the resolve.configuration file in that directory. And again, I'm using Unbound, so I'll be using 127.0.0.1. If you're not running Unbound, what you need to do is you need to specify a DNS server you're going to use, like Google DNS 8.8.8 or 8.8.4.4. And again, if you're not using Unbound, just remove these sections here. You're not going to need them. And then we've got the down script where we remove the resolve.configuration file, and we delete the namespace. And again, if you're not using Unbound, just remove this block of code here. And then what we did was we made the script executable and we copied it to use local bin. Now this is the Unbound systemd namespace service file, and if you're not using Unbound, just skip this step. But basically what we did here was I copied the default configuration file for Unbound, and what I'm doing here is basically prefixing the exec start, exec reload with this chunk of code here. So use bin IP net ns execute VPN. So what that's basically saying is create the namespace and then run Unbound in that namespace. And what we do is we create a new PID file for this configuration. And then what we did was we copied the service file we created into the etc systemd system directory, and then we reload systemd. We set systemd to reload the daemon to pick up that new configuration file. Then what we had was a new script called namespace here. So this is the namespace script, sudo IP netnx execute VPN sudo -u who am I, and this block here is the important bit. And basically, as I said, what that will do is that will run the script as your user, and that's really important, because if you try and run Firefox as root, 1, it's really bad, and 2, it's going to give you an error saying that a X authentication the X file, the X authority file is owned by a different user or something. So we create the file, the namespace script with this bit of code, make it executable, and copy it to user local bin. And then for added brownie points, what we do is we edited our ZSH RC configuration file with this bit of code here. And what that will do is that will just give us auto completion for the namespace script. Then after that, what we did was we had to set up VI's, the sudo as file to allow us to run the namespace command without a password, which we need to be able to launch GUI applications from our application launcher. So first of all, what we did was we ran sudo update -alternatives -configure editor because by default, as I said, Ubuntu has switched the editor for VI sudo to nano, which I don't like. So when you run that, you'll basically get this screen come up here and select the editor that you want to use with VI sudo and press return. So I press 4, press return, and it's updated the script to use Vim Tiny, which is sort of like VI, to edit our sudo as file. Then what we're going to do is, as I said, we're going to edit our sudo as file. And as I said before, what you want to do is, just in case you muck anything up, open 2 terminals and log in as root in the first terminal. And then the second terminal, run sudo vi sudo. And what we're going to be doing is adding this code here. And you're going to replace my username with your username. Okay. So add that to the vi sudo as file and save it. Now, after we did that, what we did was we created the Firefox desktop entry by copying the default Firefox desktop entry, which on Ubuntu is in this location. And we copied it to the desktop and called it namespace-firefox.desktop. And again, what we needed to do was we needed to change the name to correspond to the name of the desktop entry, which is namespace-firefox. Building work. So that's the first step. And then what we had to do was come down to the exec line. So we come down here, exec, and we prefix it with user local bin namespace, which is the script that we created. And come down again into these sections, look for exec, and do the same thing. Okay. And then what we do is we copy the namespace-firefox.desktop file to our home directory .local share applications. And now the next step after that was creating the torrent script, and basically that's just this script here, which starts the transmission daemon. So create the torrent script with this bit of code, make it executable, change mod +x torrents, move the script to user local bin, sudo mv torrents user local bin, and then we can start the transmission daemon in the VPN namespace by running namespace torrents. And again, you can check your IP address with what's my IP address, and you can check your torrent IP address by going to this site and starting the magnet link, and it will show you the torrent IP address, and that will match the IP address in your browser. So basically, once we've got all that set up, which isn't actually too much work, and the advantage of this method is there's no IP tables stuff. I've done previously I've done different versions of this where you can create a separate routing table and then use a SOX5 proxy attached to that routing table to, send applications over the tunnel. But that's a bit of a long-winded way of doing it, and not all applications support SOX5 to allow you to do that. So the advantage of this method is that it allows you to have two separate exits from your network, your regular exit and your VPN, and you can then basically set whichever applications on the command line or GUI applications you want to run through the VPN tunnel. And that's just much more flexible, and it basically allows you to download stuff over the VPN, but also have all your regular traffic go out for your regular interface, so that you can watch TV in your local area on the internet, which you wouldn't normally be able to do if everything was going through your VPN configuration file. The other thing I just wanted to briefly touch on was on Firefox. You can see here I've got tabs. Yeah, I know Firefox has always got tabs, but in the new Firefox you've kind of got these floating tabs. And also you'll notice here I've removed the close button, the minimize button and everything. And the way I did that was, I just come across here, Firefox CSS. Okay. This is Firefox. This is how you can modify your Firefox appearance by creating a user.js file and a user chrome.css and user content.css file. Yeah, Proton tabs. Where was the thing? There's a I think there's a site, Firefox, like Chrome hacks or something. I can't remember what the name of it is at the moment, but I'll put a link to it when I under the video when I find it. But basically, what it will allow you to do is create tweaks to change the tabs back to how they are normally. So this is the bit of code that I've got in my user chrome.css file here, which puts the tabs back. So what I'm going to do is just come across here, and in Firefox, let me see if I can, somewhere like about Firefox, somewhere in Firefox where you actually will show you your directory about Firefox. I'll show you it manually. Basically, if I just come across here for a second, bear with me. cd.mozilla Firefox. What you'll see here is this directory here, default release, and that's your profile directory. So if I change into here, what you'll see is I created a directory called Chrome, which is actually a symbolic link to the Git repository I created. And I've also added the user.js, which is a symbolic link to the user.js file. So what you do is you basically put your user.js file and the Chrome directory in here with these files. So let me just come across. Where was it? Here we go. So the user.js. Normally, when you're in Firefox and you run like about :config and you enter, you can change options for Firefox. It will save it to a file called user like pref.js or something. But what you can do is you create this user.js file, and you can specify the options that you'd use with the about config in Firefox. And what I'm doing here is enabling the legacy profile customization style sheet, and that allows you to use custom style sheets with Firefox. So that's the user.js file. And in the Chrome file here, I've got user Chrome and user content. Now, user Chrome is for changing the appearance of Firefox. Let me just close some of these tabs here because I don't need them. So user Chrome here, what we've got is this bit of code here. And what I'm doing is this bit hides the close, minimize, and resize buttons because I'm using a tiling window manager and they don't have any effect and they're just visually annoying, so I remove them. And I'm using the Proton tabs tweak code to actually remove the floating tabs and send them back to normal. So that's the user Chrome file. And the user content file, what this allows me to do is style the blank page for Firefox. And what you've got is two options. You've got like URL, domain, or URL prefix. So what we've got here is this sets the new tab to the styling I've got here. What I've done here is I've got YouTube, and what I've done is restyled YouTube to have a dark background. Let me just bring that up a second. Load that up. A second, and it's going to kick in, and then we go. We've got a nice dark theme for YouTube. Okay, so all that's going across here. So if I'm not going to open the video, but I'm just going to show you what it looks like. You see here, all that's working nicely, and that's all dark theme. And that's basically done using this Atmos document domain YouTube. And I said you've got three options for this here. I've got URL for a specific URL, domain, which applies to a domain and all the subdomains, or you've got URL dash prefix, in which case you would put https www.youtube. And what the URL prefix will allow you to do is just affect something on a particular domain, because, for example, if you just did domain google.com with this bit of code here, it would apply to all the google.com subdomains like docs, sheets, all that kind of stuff, and you don't want that. So if you're trying to do stuff with Google, what you want to use is URL dash prefix https www.google.com to style something on Google. And then further down here, what I've got is DuckDuckGo and DuckDuckGo Lite. So I'm just going to come across to DuckDuckGo. I'll just type like Linux. So this is DuckDuckGo, the HTML version. And you can see it's a dark theme. So I'm just going to come across to Chrome. We'll just close that and come across to Chrome. DuckDuckGo HTML. Okay, so by default, that's what the HTML version of DuckDuckGo looks like, all white. Whereas if I come across to DuckDuckGo, just the regular one, it should come up with the dark theme. Maybe it's not doing it on here. There is should be an option here for setting a dark theme. Okay, dark, save and exit. So the DuckDuckGo looks like this by default. Okay, but I actually prefer the HTML version because it's quicker to load, but it's all white. So I found that really irritating. So what I did was I changed it so that it looks like this. So you can see here's the regular version of DuckDuckGo, and here's my version here. And you can see as I move over, we get the same sort of effect here. You see, basically what I've done is I've just pinched the CSS from the regular DuckDuckGo and applied it to DuckDuckGo, the HTML version. Because it's quicker to load and it gives you exactly the same results. So that's just something else I wanted to mention is styling Firefox, and basically that's the block of code for DuckDuckGo and DuckDuckGo Lite and YouTube. So it's one of the few things in a web browser you can actually change. With Firefox, you can change the appearance of stuff completely, and it's just nice to be able to do that. So that's just something else I've come across on how to change the user Chrome, remove the floating tabs, remove the little buttons there, and style different websites by a domain. So that's how we can create a split route with script. So again, got the namespace script, nice and easy. We've got the NetNS VPN script for the up and down configuration of the VPN, and then we've got the torrent script, and we've got the actual script that starts the VPN. And in my case, I'm using Openvpn with private internet access, and we created an auth.txt file with our credentials. And basically, as I said, what that allows us to do is, if I just come back and for one last time show you how all this works, and just quit that. So when we want to create the namespace and create the VPN and the namespace, all we have to do is run sudo VPN, give it the authentication file, the VPN configuration file. Okay, you can see initialization sequence complete. And then what I can do is I can launch Firefox by typing namespace Firefox. That's going to launch. What's my IP? Goes here. Loads up. Unblock that. Reload it. Ah, you bastard. Give it a second to reload. See, there's the IP address. And again, then what we'll do is we'll start a torrent client, namespace torrents, transmission, and we'll come across and we'll check the torrent IP address again. Check my torrent IP address, open the magnet link, bang, give it a second, it's going to come up with the IP address. Okay, IP address 184.170.241.191 corresponds to that. So we can then see that both the browser and the torrent client are being routed through the VPN. We can run dnsleaktest.com. Bang. Corresponds. We're in US. Let me just disable that and show you that again. Extended test, and it's just going to return one DNS server, which is my local Unbound server. Okay. And what I'm going to do also is I block Facebook at a DNS level, so unable to connect. Okay, so it's not connecting to Facebook because I block all Facebook stuff using Unbound as well as adverts, and this proves that the Unbound DNS server is being used to resolve our DNS through the VPN configuration, because as you can see it's blocking facebook.com, which is what I specified in my Unbound setup. So that's how we can send all our traffic through the VPN. And again, that doesn't stop us browsing regularly. You can see this browser is not in the VPN namespace because, as I said, because it's a Snap application, it won't basically work for some reason or other. So I can browse stuff regularly through my regular connection. I can come to, you know what I mean, I can come to channel 4 when it loads up. I can watch stuff on channel 4 or ITV player, ITV hub. I'm not going to actually open anything. But you can see it's not giving me any error messages saying, oh no, you're in a different location, you can't watch this. So I can watch all the stuff on Channel 4, ITV, BBC Player, while simultaneously being connected to the VPN in the split route and downloading stuff and browsing stuff here. And again, it allows you to run commands on command line in either your regular namespace or over the VPN, just by prefixing it with namespace, you know, like ping c3google.com. So that's going to ping Google 3 times. You can see 1, 2, 3, no packet loss, or I can just do the same thing regularly through my regular connection. Give it a second or 2, or 3, 4. Yep, there we go. No packet lost. So you can see I can basically prefix any command on the command line with namespace to send it over the VPN, which, as I said, is you know, might be useful in certain cases, but also how we can create a desktop entry to launch GUI applications and send them through the network namespace by copying the desktop file and editing it as I showed you with the Firefox config. And for that to work, you need to edit your sudo as file to allow us to run that command without prompting for our password, which is you know, vital for that to work. And again, if I just come across here, what I'll do is I'll just open up top and see if I can find Firefox. I don't know if I can see Firefox here. It's not showing up, bastard. But if it was, is it gonna? Where's the bloody thing? Forget how you use this half time. Okay, Firefox. There we go. Oh, it was there a second ago, and now it flipping disappeared. But basically, you would see that Firefox is running as my sort of regular user. If it would actually, there we go. Firefox. Yeah, it was there a second ago, but it's running as my regular user. It's not running Firefox as root, which would be really, really bad. So that's how we can create a VPN split route with Linux namespaces and put command line applications or GUI applications into the VPN network namespace. So we can basically run all our, we can run a browser in there so we can browse torrent sites. We can then send all the torrents to transmission to download them, while at the same time having our regular connection for our normal network traffic going out a regular interface, so we can, you know, watch stuff in our region on the internet, whether it's ITV, BBC, what have you, at the same time, as well as you know, pimping Firefox a bit. And I'll put a note to the site where you can fix the floating tabs and, like, you know, remove stuff and style it, and also how we styled YouTube. So this browser is now running YouTube through the VPN, And you notice the one difference is when you're in the UK and you run, or Europe, and you go to YouTube, you get that message saying, you know, whatever the message is. But when you go to the US, you don't get that message. And the advantage of running some stuff through here is you can actually watch some stuff on YouTube, like videos. They've got movies which are supported by ads, but you could also grab the URL for this for something from YouTube from the US and watch it with MPV, or you know, do other stuff on the command line with that video link. So that's basically running YouTube through the namespace, so that we could watch stuff in different regions on YouTube. And again, if you wanted to then you know, do something, you could grab the link here and then you know, run namespace, and then, you know, the command that you'd use with YouTube and the URL, which I won't mention, to do stuff with it. Not downloaded, of course. You know, that'd be up to you. But basically, it means we've got access to YouTube in another country, and we can play it in the browser or in the terminal. So that's basically all for now, and how we can improve our sort of privacy and sort of security on Linux by using different namespaces for stuff, and, you know, sending all our DNS queries through the tunnel, while at the same time working locally and not interfering with watching stuff on stuff in our region. So that's all for now, and I'll post links to all this under the video.